Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about practical methods and exercises for using forgiveness, letting go and release in order to reduce and bring down anxiety. I'm Orla Kirby. I'm a therapist specialising in helping people to move themselves away from severe anxiety and or OCD. So if you ever struggle with anxiety or severe anxiety yourself, you know that it can be a really challenging thing to deal with and to handle. And in the video just previous to this one, I talked about and explained why and how forgiveness and letting go is so important for bringing down and reducing anxiety. So if you want to know the whys and hows of it, I recommend looking back at that video, which is the last one in the series, the previous one to this. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to kind of assume that you're already on board with the idea that forgiveness, letting go, release is fantastic for bringing down anxiety. And I'm simply going to walk you through some ways in which you can actually do this. Okay, so I'm going to talk first about an unsent letter, then about a technique that I learned about in a book that originally was based on something called Ho'oponopono, a Hawaiian tradition. Then I'm going to very briefly mention tapping or EFT, and then I'm going to talk about visualization and particular metaphors and visualizations that are really great for getting into a way of forgiving and releasing and letting go. And then I'm going to talk about sleep, both as a release mechanism in itself and also as helpful in enabling all of these other kinds of ways of releasing and forgiving and letting go. Okay, so to start off then with the unsent letter, this is where you write down a letter that starts off, I am angry with you because, right? Or when you did this, I felt like this, and I really wish I could tell you this, and you just get it all off your chest, right? Or it could be a letter to your past self if there's something that you feel bad about or that you feel like you need to forgive yourself or just to release, to let go of from the past, that you have a lot of regrets around or that you feel bad about for some reason. You can write a letter to yourself, to that past self, me at 15. I'm going to write to me at 15, or I'm going to write to me at 10, or I'm going to write to me at 22, and just pour it all out. Or it could even be a letter to a particular situation or to a school that you went to or a workplace that you were in, right? Wherever you think it'd be helpful to write to, right? Now, we're not going to send this letter just before you start thinking that, because first of all, it might hold us back if we were going to, right? We might not actually get off our chest everything that we want to if we felt like someone else might be reading it. So it's an opportunity to be really open, because you don't need to worry about how the other person's going to react or how they might feel if we said that. And then also, often, once we have resolved internally the way we feel about something, there then isn't necessarily that need to go and confront someone from the past or, confront someone in our life now about something that happened 10 years ago. There might be, right? I'm not saying there aren't instances where that is necessary. It might be the right choice for you. And of course, you would want to use your own judgment there. But this is mainly, this unsent letter practice, about that internal work, right? So you write your big long letter, and you could do this, you could write 7 different ones, right? But start with one. And you are then going to, you can actually physically do something to the letter, but that's not particularly necessary, right? You can just throw the letter away. But you could physically burn the letter or do something. But I want you to imaginatively do something to the letter. That's the most important thing. So after you pour it all out, you're going to then imagine yourself, go into a relaxed state, imagine yourself holding this letter, and you're standing on a bridge, a beautiful bridge across a river, and you're just going to gently, easily let the letter go. Down, 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 falls into the water. You see it go under the bridge. You look back and you see it be carried along on the water. It's floating on the top, away, away, till you can't see it anymore. Or you could imaginatively, close your eyes, go into a relaxed state. Imagine that you're sitting by a fire in a wonderful room and you feel very comfortable, easy and relaxed, and you have this letter with you, and you decide that you're going to just easily throw the letter into the fire and see the letter be consumed, see it change colour, it gets burned up, it changes into ash, and it's gone, right? Or some other visualization of it floating away in the wind, or disappearing in some way or other, whatever makes sense for you. So that's one route. I'm going to very briefly talk about a technique from a book that I came across by Denise Duffield Thomas, and it's kind of drawn from Ho'oponopono. Now, I'm aware that there is a very necessary debate now about whether or not to use techniques from different cultures. So I just want to kind of say as a caveat that I'm not trained in Ho'oponopono, and I think that the technique I'm going to describe to you may well be quite distant from what people actually did in Hawaii centuries ago, right? However, that being said, this technique, as I have discovered it, as I found it in this book, is a very useful one. So I kind of want to share it with you for that reason. So if you write down these phrases, there's 3 short sentences. I forgive you. Thank you. I'm sorry. I love you. Right? 4 short phrases. Sometimes you might hear them in different orders. That's the order that I prefer using, but there are different orders. And the idea here is to draw into your mind a memory that has a strong negative emotion. It might have guilt. It might have fear, sadness, hurt, pain of some kind associated with it, right? And you are going to draw this to your mind, or you might want to write down a list of all kinds of memories that bother you, that you're aware trouble you, and then go through the list and do this Ho'oponopono process to each one, right? But say you've got your first item on the list, or this memory that is bothering you, and if it's a bigger situation that's bothering you, you might want to pick a scene from that time, say, because you want something that you can imagine. And then as you are holding that in your mind, I want you to imagine that there's perhaps a frame around that, or it's a drawing on a piece of paper, or in some way it's something that's able to move. And a bit like with the Unsent Letter, I want you to imagine it drifting off. Like you go and open a window, and you lean out the window, and this picture of that scene happening, you're going to just lean out and open your hand, let it drift off in the wind. As you say, I forgive you. Right, you might be speaking here to yourself or to other people or both, or it might be a situation where there's forgiveness for a lot of people involved, but you're just making a decision about release and letting go, that you're not going to hold on so tightly to this anymore, because you want to be in that emotional state of forgiving as you're saying, I forgive you. Then the next one is thank you, and sometimes people think, wow, there isn't anything for me to be thankful about here. This is just a horrible thing that happened. I don't feel thankful. I shouldn't feel thankful. But you might want to think widely, right? So if it's someone in your life, is there something else that you feel thankful about in terms of that person? Is there some reason that you are thankful for them, or for their presence, or for something they've done in your life? Can you bring that into your awareness of so that you're aware of that feeling, that warm feeling towards them, that feeling of thankfulness, at the same time as holding this scene in your mind, right? You're bringing that in, that state. You're shifting your emotional state while holding this memory in your mind. Or maybe not, right? Maybe there isn't anything that you feel thankful for about the presence of this person in your life, or the presence of this institution, or it might be about yourself, and it's difficult to connect with that. Then think about a bit more widely, what do I feel thankful? I'm thankful that I'm alive. I'm thankful that I survived that. Right? That was really hard. I'm thankful that I've made it through. I'm thankful that things are different now. I'm thankful that I have people in my life now that I have a different kind of relationship with now compared to those relationships that I had at that time. Or, in a really basic level, like I'm thankful for the sky. I'm thankful for the air that I'm breathing. But it has to be in a really genuine way, right? You can't just be paying lip service to this. You need to conjure that state in yourself somehow of, oh, I'm so thankful for this. Deeply thankful for this, right? While you want to go into that emotional state while still holding that scene in your mind. Because what you're doing there is you're actually creating a new thing. You're creating a different kind of memory, right? It's not going to be the same afterwards because you're shifting that whole place in your mind quite powerfully. The next statement is, I'm sorry. And sometimes, in a situation of conflict of some kind, there may well be something that you feel sorry for. If you're remembering and forgiving a situation of conflict between you and another person, or you're in a group of people, maybe there was something that you didn't do well, or that you did that wasn't great. Or it might actually be that you're forgiving your own action where you were the main one that was doing something unpleasant, right? Or just not ideal. And, there may well be plenty that you genuinely want to say, I'm sorry for. In which case you can use that. Right, and you want to really genuinely connect with that sense of I'm sorry. However, maybe not. Maybe there isn't anything in that situation that you wish you'd done differently, or that you feel like you could have done in a more ideal way. In which case, you maybe, might want to connect more with a sense of, if it's a person, I'm sorry that I gave you power over me for so long. Right, I'm sorry that until this moment of forgiveness in my life, I have been holding on to this memory, this stored emotion. I'm sorry that I gave you that power over me. I'm sorry that I gave that event this power over me. I'm sorry that I gave that school this power over me. I'm sorry that I, farmed out my power to these other people or happenings, or even to my previous self, right? So that's another kind of I'm sorry, but it has to be deeply felt. It has to be meant. This doesn't work if you just pay lip service to it. And again, you're creating a change there in your mind, right? That memory alters when you are linked to it, but bringing yourself into a different mental and emotional state, right? You're actually making a new thing in your mind. The old thing doesn't exist in the same way anymore. And the last one, I love you. There may be something that's quite obvious or simple here, right? If it's yourself that you're forgiving, of course you can connect with a sense of self-love, surround yourself in golden light, lean into things that you love or like about yourself. If it's forgiving someone else, it might be someone who was in your life then, who's still in your life now, who you do love, who you've loads of love for, in which case, absolutely, you can connect with that very real sense of, I love you, right? And just allow yourself to be full of that love for that person as you think about this thing from the past. However, not necessarily, you might not necessarily have a sense of personal love for this person from the bottom. Maybe it was a stranger who did something unpleasant to you and you never met them again, right? In that case, there's a need here for connecting with a more general, larger sense of love, right? Like a love for all human beings, or a love for the world. Again, it needs to be genuine and felt, but just in that sense of, if anyone was having a heart attack, you would phone an ambulance, right? Because you care about people generally, right? So you're stepping into that, you're connecting with that peaceful, warm sense of love, of care, I love you, right? And sending that out to everyone involved in that scene, almost like you're surrounding everyone in that scene in golden light, in warmth. You're giving them a particular kind of attention, kind of compassion, love, warmth, genuinely stepping into that and surrounding the people in that scene in that, right? Whether that's just yourself or that involves other people too. And you're saying, I love you, right? So it's a 4-step process, and you use the emotion at the same time as the statements. So I forgive you, thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, right? And you are applying each one after the other. And after this, that memory will never be the same again, right? If you do this genuinely, you go into this properly at a deep level, you've shifted entirely the workings of your mind there. Okay. And, this might be something that you need to rerun. If you just feel very self-conscious the first time, or you find it hard to get into, try again the next day. Okay, then I'm just going to very briefly mention tapping and EFT. I'm only going to talk about this briefly because it's not something that I'm trained in as a practitioner, although I do want to train. I've been using it myself and finding it really useful, kind of from a client point of view. So I think it is something that I want to train in the new year. But yeah, I will put some resources in the description that goes along with this video to point you to other YouTube videos and resources where you can learn about EFT and tapping. But just briefly so that you know, and so it's included here as a resource, tapping and EFT is also an excellent mechanism of something you can do by yourself that will help you with forgiveness and letting go and release. And why I've included the Ho'oponopono and the tapping here even though the main ways that I work on release with people as a therapist are quite different, is because the techniques that I use are quite practitioner-led. So the main thing that we would use in NLP and neurolinguistic programming for release and letting go is timeline therapy. And that's a process where someone works imaginatively with their own imagined version of time. So as a therapist or a practitioner, you help someone to access that, to learn how to use their mind in that way. And then you guide them through a process. And it absolutely is them doing it. It's the person themselves. It's the client doing the releasing, the forgiving, and the letting go. They're definitely the active one doing it. But as a practitioner, you're imaginatively guiding them through a process, quite a scripted, direct process, where there's this stage and that stage, and they imagine this, and you prompt them to do this inside their mind, and you're kind of guiding them the whole way. So there isn't really a way to do that process. You can't do timeline therapy to yourself, right? I couldn't do timeline therapy to myself. So that is, and I would say it's a hugely helpful process. And I suppose there's a useful caveat here to everything I'm saying about forgiveness, where compared to, I think, all of the other things for reducing anxiety that I've talked about in this video series, forgiveness and letting go and release is maybe the hardest one to do completely by yourself, I would say. So if you have had a very difficult childhood, or you feel like you're carrying a lot of stored negative emotion from the past, I would really encourage you to try therapy if you can, if that's a possibility for you. However, that being said, there's always a certain amount you can do by yourself. So as I say, you could try the Unsent Letter, you could try the techniques that I described from Ho'oponopono, you could try tapping and EFT, and all of those will make a huge difference. And now I'm just going to talk about some metaphors. These aren't techniques as such, but just for shifting yourself almost into the style of, or the way of, or the kind of mental approach that you want to be taking as you're doing this kind of release work. So, for example, you could do a visualization where you're standing by a waterfall, and just as the waterfall is crashing into the pool and the water's flowing away, you are imagining, any troubles or stored negative emotion you may have flowing into that pool, like your own waterfall, pouring into that pool, being carried away. Or you could put yourself into a relaxed state, and imagine that you're lying down on grass, just my microphone there, that you're lying down on grass, and that your troubles, any stored emotion that you carry from the past, it's just seeping into the grass and down into the ground. Just the way the morning dew sits on the grass and then seeps into the grass, into the ground. Right? So what I want to draw your attention to here is that it's always a decision. To a certain extent, if we are holding on to something, it's like we're doing this, right? We're holding it like this. So if I'm holding on to anger from the past, that's an active thing that I'm doing. So the forgiveness isn't so much an active doing thing, it's an allowing ourselves to stop doing a thing, right? So if I'm holding on to anger or sadness or fear, like I'm doing this, and the forgiveness, like that takes effort, that takes energy. The forgiveness and the letting go is just allowing myself to do that, right? It's stopping the effort. It's allowing myself to just let go of that holding that I'm doing. So that's an important kind of understanding to go into any of this kind of work with. And you can kind of develop and inculcate that approach to yourself by going through these kind of visualization or meditation processes where you suggest to yourself the importance of letting go, of releasing, right? And there's actually an audio track that I made recently about releasing into a waterfall, and I will link to that in the description, so you could try listening to that. And then lastly, I just want to talk about sleep briefly. So as we sleep anyway, as we dream in our REM sleep, our dream sleep, we are doing a huge amount anyway of releasing, of forgiving, of letting go. That's part of the whole point of REM, is that it's reorganizing and shifting around our thought patterns. It's why people go completely mad if they're deprived of REM sleep. It has a really severe impact on mental health because we need to have that processing and shifting around, and that needs to be maybe moved over here, and it gives us a perspective. That kind of shifting and ordering and clearing and cleaning of the warehouse of our thoughts is essential to us feeling okay, us feeling reasonably happy, reasonably confident, and so on. So there's a releasing and a clearing and a deleting process happening every night anyway in REM sleep. So simply allowing ourselves as much as possible to get our kind of 7.5 to 8 hours sleep every night is one way of allowing ourselves to forgive and let go, right? That's actually quite powerful in and of itself. And I know that's hard to hear if you're really struggling to sleep, right? So apologies there, right? Because I know that sometimes if you're struggling with high anxiety, it can really mess with your ability to sleep. And that's really unfair because that's the time when you need it most. So things that you can do to encourage really great sleep in yourself, or actually even if your sleep is already fine, these will help your quality of sleep to improve and may help you do more releasing, more forgiving just while you sleep, is meditation, right? If you have a daily meditation practice, that's going to help hugely with the quality of your sleep. Put on a hypnosis track before you sleep, that's going to help as well. And also kind of small positive daily actions. That's going to boost your brain chemistry, kind of positive reward system of serotonin, endorphins, and dopamine, and that is also going to help you be in an ideal state for sleep functioning really well. So you could go back and look at the video in this series on meditation, and you could go and look at the video on small positive actions. Those would help with sleep. And you could also go to orlakirby.com/learn to meditate, and if you engage with the meditation practices there, that would also really help improve sleep quality. And I would also say that sleep does its own forgiving and releasing work, and it's also going to be super helpful and even more necessary really if you are engaging in any of these other practices and doing your own release and forgiveness work. Sleep is going to kind of carry that forward, continue that good work, and help that to happen in a way that feels gentle and natural to you. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to this video. The next video is going to be on how getting professional help can help to reduce anxiety. So I'll see you in the next one.